Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another awesome digital cover story. And we are so honored and blessed to have for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is October, Nia Renee. She is here to join us and tell us a little bit about her story, her journey, and what she advocates for now. So let's start. I'm sure people may have read about you, but in case they have not met you yet, tell us a little bit about your personal journey.
Yeah, so I'm Coach Nia Renee. I am a survivor of childhood abuse, childhood sexual assault, rape, domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, you name it, abuse in all the spectrum of what it is. I've endured it since the age of 1 through the age of 26. And so I had a significant portion of my life spent in being in domestically violent relationships, whether they were familial or romantic relationships.
Okay, that's a lot to digest. And so we see you survive beautifully. What did that look like for you, or what did that take for you to get to where you are now?
It's been a long journey, and I'm still on the healing journey. I think when we look at what the healing journey encompasses, we have to remind ourselves that it is a journey and not a destination. And so it's going to ebb, it's going to flow, it's going to have its ups, it's going to have its downs. I'm currently on an up, thank goodness. I am currently in the process of reevaluating my childhood trauma. But what it took for me was when I realized I was laying next to someone that I loved, that I was in love with, who didn't like me. Like, when you don't like me at my core, it's impossible to love me through that. And so I left. And I left before things started to get physical. It was already sexually violent, but he wasn't physically violent. And so I left. And once I left, I wanted to go on this personal journey to understand why I was so attracted to the same type of people. And then I realized it stemmed from my childhood. It stemmed from the relationship that I had with my mother. It stemmed from the things that I had endured in my childhood is what ultimately set me up for how I had my relationships in my adulthood. And so that journey has been very eye-opening, and realizing that I had to go back to the beginning in order to heal the present.
Okay. That's a lot. So, and so did you have assistance in doing this, or what was the light that flicked on and said it should be done?
I made a vow to myself that was going to be my last abusive relationship, because I had endured several abusive relationships prior to that.
Okay.
Some that were physically violent, some that were just mentally and emotionally abusive, and then the combination of all three: physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, and I endured all of those things. But once I made a vow to myself that was going to be my last abusive relationship, and I needed to get to the deep root of what was causing me to feel so comfortable around people like that.
Right.
And so that was a huge breaking point for me. And I said, I need to go to therapy. And I started therapy, and I wanted to do intensive therapy. So I had a talk therapist, and then I had a therapist that was a psychotherapist that did EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which helps the brain reprocess the trauma that's stored in the body. Okay. And I specifically wanted to see a male therapist, because my largest issues at that time was interactions with men. and I needed to overcome my fear of men and understand where that fear was deep rooted in the trauma that I had endured by my mother.
Okay. So did you have to, is your mother still alive? I'm sorry.
Yes, she's still alive, but
So
she's
did
not
you have
in life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Did you have to detach yourself in order to heal? And do you feel like it was easier? I say easier. It was more effective for you to have the male therapist than a female therapist.
Yeah, so I had already detached from my mom. At that point we had been no contact going on about 5 years, I want to say, maybe 6 years. And so I had already detached myself from that, removed myself from that relationship. And it was ultimately very beneficial to see the male therapist, because I had a female therapist that I was seeing
before.
talk therapy. At the same time, I was doing talk therapy once a week while doing EMDR therapy once a week. So I was in therapy twice a week for a year working on these things. So the talk therapist, I was just working on like what was going on in my day to day, kind of like what was going on in just like my regular life. And then my psychotherapy was more intensive, focusing on specific trauma that I needed to maneuver through in order to kind of break up some of that traumatic responses that I was having. And so then it got me to a place where I said, I'm going to go on a 6-month dating myself, where I wasn't having sex with anyone. I wasn't being intimate with anyone. I wasn't having conversations with anyone romantically. I wasn't looking for anyone. I just went on this journey of discovering who is Nia Renee now after the abuse. And now that I'm on the journey to realizing that this is not the path I want to continue on. And so I ended up breaking a cycle. And once I broke that cycle, I hit the ground running and I just kept on going.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, the biggest hurdle that you hear in research, you hear in stories, is having those boundaries. How important or healthy do you coach now that the importance of boundaries, or how do you stress to create those?
Yeah. So when I work with my clients, I start with healing and repairing the relationship that you have with yourself.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean that you have to. I tell my clients, especially because I go off of Dr. Ramani, who is like one of the largest narcissistic abuse therapists, like coach guru of what narcissistic abuse is. Okay. She says that you don't have to forgive someone in order to heal. I also agree with that sentiment.
I agree.
You do not have to forgive your abusers in order to heal from the things that you've endured, but you do have to forgive yourself for the things that you did in order to survive. Right? We have to forgive ourselves for the way that our nervous system responded, whether it was freeze, fight, fawn, or flee. It doesn't matter which way our nervous system reacts. We still endured things that we know that on the outside of it now we're looking back that we wouldn't have tolerated. And so we have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive that version of ourselves that did what we had to do in order to survive. And once we're able to kind of break into that and break down that piece, stack by stack, we're able to get into that real deep place of radical self-trust. Once you establish radical self-trust, that's where the boundaries come to you a lot easier, a lot quicker to be able to solve, and how to set and also reinforce, because you can have as many boundaries as you want. Mm-hmm. You just have to be able to set those boundaries. So not set those boundaries, reinforce those boundaries. And that's kind of the hard part, is reinforcing those boundaries.
Now, going through this, it seems like a lifelong journey, probably continuous because of how much you've endured. How do you coach, or how do you suggest someone even recognize that what's going on is abuse? Because you said at first, since it was a norm, it seemed like it was a norm for you, that it's hard to recognize. So, and I know narcissist is a word that people are like throwing around lately,
Mhm.
and it may not even fit what that is, because it
Right.
goes deeper than just being self, gratifying. It goes way deeper than that part. So,
Right.
how do you get others to recognize that they're actually being abused?
Right. I think that one, we need to start removing, because narcissistic abuse is such a specific type of abuse, and not everybody is dealing with a narcissist. Some people are just dealing with an abuser. And so we just take away the narcissist piece and just keep in mind abuse and abuser. I think it's important that we keep that in mind. Now, some of the things that we have to pay attention to, and this is where I coach others on how to achieve this, again, is where that peak radical self-trust comes in. Our body signals us. The body keeps the score, which is a book. But the body keeps the score, right? The body, when we have interactions with people, are you relaxed? Are you tense? Do you feel anxious? Do you have that pit feeling that feeling in the pit of your stomach that something is off? Do you feel like things aren't right? Trust that. Lean into that. Believe that. Listen to that voice. We're often taught to dismiss our inner voice, to believe and trust someone else over our own thoughts and feelings.
Mhm.
And we have to be able to own our thoughts and feelings and listen to how our body responds to the way people make you feel. And if that person, and be careful, we have to be very careful with who we call home. If your home was a place of violence, I saw that quote somewhere.
Okay.
Be careful when you say someone feels like home, if you grew up in a place that was built on violence.
Mhm.
It's important, because if I say this feels like home, well, home to me was never safe.
Got it. Yes.
But home for what I'm building now feels a lot different than the home that I had when I was a child. But I had to do a lot of work. So we have to recognize patterns. If things feel consistent to you enough to where you're like, that's a red flag, and it keeps popping up, you have to trust that. But 9.25 out of 10 times, you're not going to recognize instantly that that person is abusive. Unfortunately, it's something that happens over time. It takes time, because they mirror your personality, they get you in the beginning, they pretend who they are, and of course, by nature, we believe that. We're inclined to trust that someone is presenting themselves to be who they're presenting themselves as.
Right.
That's how they get us. And then it ultimately ends up flipping, and then they change into a completely different person. And at that point, you're already emotionally tied to them. And so your body starts to have a chemical reaction. So it's a lot deeper than
Yeah.
you think, right?
It appears almost criminal.
Yes, it is
To
criminal.
an extent, even if it's just emotional. And I think a lot of times people have a hard time separating that, and they say, well, I'm not being hit, I'm not being this, or they just say it only can happen to women, when it can happen in the reverse. Abuse is abuse.
Right.
Why do you feel like, I know you know that it's important to talk about, but what gave you the charge to say, hey, I want to also help others deal with this on a larger scale? Because you still going through your own process. So it takes a lot to try to absorb the hurt or the pain from someone else. So what gave you that push to say, hey, I'm gonna coach it?
Yeah, so it took me a long time to get to the place of coaching. I'm coming up on 7 years of my business, and I started my business as a blog, and I was starting to write a book. I was on the journey of teaching people how to love a battered woman, because I was in a relationship with someone at the time where I believed that they didn't know how to be in a relationship with someone who had endured trauma the way that I have endured trauma.
Okay.
I didn't realize that I was writing a pathway for my abuser to love me, but I didn't realize he was my abuser. So when I realized I was being abused, I took my dog, I took my stuff, and I took my business, and we left. And I started talking about abuse more because I had my platform originally started because I have so much sexual trauma. It originally started with that because I already need to be loved a certain way because I have a lot of sexual trauma, and sexual trauma is not talked about enough. It's so stigmatized, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't believe that you can be assaulted by someone you're in a relationship with, and that's just not the truth. But I had a lot of sexual trauma, and so it started with that. And then I started talking about it on social media, and then I started doing skits, and then my TikTok sort of blew up during the pandemic. And then people started asking me, well, do you offer coaching sessions? Like, do you do one-on-ones with people? And I was like, no, I don't really do that, because I really wanted to have the certification behind me. I wanted to have a sort of backing behind me, so people, because there's a lot of, you don't need to have anything to be a coach. You can just say, I'm a coach, and that's what it is. There's no like official qualification certification thing that you have to go through. But I wanted to make sure I had those qualifications behind me. So I'm actually double certified, and I'm working on a few other certifications that's specifically for narcissistic abuse. And I'm working on another one for cognitive behavioral coaching as well, because I want to be well versed in my field. But people started asking me, and so I was like, okay, I'll get a certification. So I got my first certification, and then I started coaching. And then I got my second certification, where I started building my modality, my coaching program, and building that up. And then I've just got to a place where now I have a bit more of a structure. I'm currently working on my, currently working on my trademark for my coaching modality, because I'm turning it into a book. Like, there's a lot of things that I'm doing coaching wise, but I wanted to help people, because the biggest thing is that I never wanted anyone else to feel as alone as I felt on my journey. And my motto in the beginning was, if I could just help one person feel less alone, that's what I sought out to do. And it just so happens that I've been fortunate enough and lucky enough to have been helping thousands of people feel less alone. And so I just want to continue sharing my message. I want to continue growing that community that I have. My Battered Hearts is what I call them. Continue growing my Battered Hearts community, because we all deserve to be seen. And there is a life after abuse.
How did you cultivate your new life? Like, how did you say, it's time for me to try again? I'll say that.
Yeah, I after the 6 months I took off from dating and sex and just focusing on myself, I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I was on dating apps, Bumble specifically. Okay. And I went on a date, and it was going great. We went on 2 dates. It was going well. And then he ghosted me out of nowhere. And I had this really big like trauma response. Oh. Being ghosted, being the silent treatment is such a huge trigger for me. But I didn't understand why I was having such a huge emotional reaction to someone I've only been on 2 dates with. I was like, this is a bit extreme. So yeah, I was like, this is a bit extreme. So I went back to therapy, but I started focusing on that in therapy, because I was still, at this point, I'm still doing 2 sessions a week. Like, I'm still very committed to my mental health. And at the time I had just survived my first brain surgery. And so I was really just on the path of healing and working on myself. And then COVID happened. and everything got shut down, but Bumble started doing virtual dating. And so it was just really cool to see how we could date in the pandemic. And so one day I'm on Bumble and I see this fine man and I said, ooh, let me swipe right. But I wasn't 100% sure. And then from the very first message, I still have our messages screenshot and saved. Just from the very first message, we just were on the same frequency. And so we started dating, and then he turned into my husband. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, yeah. Like I found my husband, and the way I went about dating, I have an intentional dating workbook that I created.
Okay.
Which is basically the blueprint of what I did with myself and how that's what my coaching program is. Okay. It's almost step by step, the blueprint of what I did, how I did it to get to a place where I felt like I was safe and comfortable dating again, knowing that I could spot red flags, knowing that I could set boundaries whenever I wanted, and knowing that I could trust the decisions that I was making. And the question that I get the most is, well, how did you know that your husband was for you?
Yeah.
I said, from the very beginning, from the moment he shook my hand on our first date until waking up this morning when he went to work, he has never, ever caused me to fear him in any way. There's never been a thing about his energy, the way that he presented himself. I was never scared of that man. I was never, my nervous system was not activated with him. And that's what I mean when I tell my clients, listen to what your body is telling you.
Yeah.
So that's how you heal and repair the relationship with yourself.
So I'm glad you said that, only because I'm sure you have friends and you see and you hear stories, people entering another relationship so fast. And then now it's hashtag healing, it's hashtag relationship goals, everything but the actual work. So have you found that work interferes with you doing something new, or this relationship you have now that's glorious? Do you ever feel like a tug, even though, he makes you feel good spiritually? You're coaching constant red flag techniques. So do you second guess yourself in a relationship that you trusted? Because I know you said trust your choices. Or are you finding yourself just at ease and then now you're just, it's two separate worlds?
Oh yeah, it's definitely two separate worlds. I'm so at ease. I'm so in a place of comfort where when he's not in my orbit, I don't feel comfortable. He has become my safety.
Got it. Okay.
In every sense of the word, to where I can turn my brain off and not be hyper vigilant. I don't have to be worried if someone's going to hurt me. Like, I can put those guards down so much because he's proven to me over and over and over and over and over and over and over again that he's got my back.
Okay.
His words, his actions.
Match.
Period.
Very important. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because we've all been there. You live in this fantasy world, like, well, I see the potential. But does his words match the action? Love it.
Right.
So you are branded as creating this thing of how to love a battered woman.
Yeah.
And you said you have what do you call them again? I'm sorry.
Battered Hearts.
Battered Hearts. Yes. Tell us a little bit about that work you're doing under that umbrella.
Yeah. So under How to Love a Battered Woman LLC, I have kind of two funnels. One side is my coaching side, where I coach narcissistic abuse survivors, those who are healing, those are working on getting in new relationships, those are who are wanting to really focus on themselves and be self-centered in their healing journey. And then I have the corporate structure side of my speaking business. I am the empathy powerhouse, where I'm redefining leadership through power and change. And I work with corporations, companies, organizations, and having empathy and leadership and understanding that those toxic behaviors that happen outside of work come into the workplace too. And leading with empathy first. Empathy is not a soft skill, it's a requirement. You have to have empathy in order to do the work that you do as a leader. And so I teach leaders how to redefine what empathy looks like to them and lead with their power and purpose. So I have two sort of different funnels that kind of intertwine.
I love it both.
Thank you.
I don't know how you have the energy, but it's gotta be God-given. Okay. How does somebody reach out? Is it either way? They go to the site, they do booking on both ends?
Yeah. So you can find me on my website, www.howtoloveabatteredwoman.com, or you can just simply reach out to me on socials. You can find me on Instagram at Coach Nia Renee. And yeah, it's pretty simple.
Okay. So one thing we love to do is receive a quote from our guests. And so I'm sure you have tons of them, but Nia Renee has been giving you nothing but transparency today. So what is a quote that gets you through the day or that you think will be helpful for our listeners?
Yeah, I say this to my Battered Hearts all the time. I say this to my community, to everyone. It's a little bit of humor, but it's a whole lot of truth. Drink some water, get some rest, and don't let nobody's dusty ass child treat you any kind of way.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing your light and your love today. I'm sure every day is a challenge, but we are so gracious that you are blessing us with your presence each day. So continue to spread your light. And man, I know even if you're not a battered woman, please support those who are. Don't do maybe it's something else. Listen to the story. If you don't have the capacity to endure the story, reach out to someone like Nia Renee. Give them resources, because sometimes people just can't handle it. And that's understandable.
Yeah, that's understandable. It's fair, but don't isolate them. Simply, you're allowed to set boundaries with someone who is a victim or survivor of abuse. You are absolutely allowed to set those emotional boundaries and say, hey, this is a bit much for me, but just be respectful for it. And like you said, point them in the direction of resources, point them in the direction of the domestic violence hotline, point them in the direction of local shelters, local organizations, local nonprofits, get them the help that they need. But it's absolutely okay to set boundaries as well. I've had to do that myself, and it's okay to do that.
We appreciate it. Thank you again. You guys follow her, support her. She has a book, buy that. Whatever she has, just buy it.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much.